What's up, guys? It's your boy Zawoki back at with another Chris Watts, Nichol Kessinger video. And again, I'm not going to lie, the 111-minute phone call still bothers me to this day. I have literally daydreamed about it, trying to figure exactly what they might have talked about, what it could be that they don't remember. And I just wanted to look at a video, watch it with you guys. And Secret in the Dark has been a great channel so far. We're going to be watching the Chris Watts 111-minute phone call before the murders. Who did he call? Who left the house that morning? Plus more. So we're going to watch it together. If you guys have not subscribed to my channel or his or theirs, make sure you guys do it now by hitting that white bar icon down at the bottom right. Hit that bell icon next to it. So when I do post videos like this one, you guys will get that little ring notification that I've posted that video. And then you guys can watch, comment, like, and share. And again, I thank you also very much for the love and support. Keep on doing what you guys are doing. Hopefully one day we'll see that 100K goal. But with that being said, let's get into Secret in the Dark's video and take a look at what he has to say.
At 5:18 a.m. on August 13, 2018, a light flickered on in front of Chris Watts' work truck. The neighborhood was still cloaked in silence, the early morning darkness interrupted only by that sudden glow. Moments later, a figure emerged, walking toward the vehicle. Less than a minute passed before the truck was backed into the driveway, an unusual sight, according to Chris's neighbor, who would later point out that Chris had never parked there before. For the next 18 minutes, the security footage captured Chris moving back and forth between the house and the truck, loading item after item. To an untrained eye, it may have looked like any ordinary morning routine. But in reality, what was being placed inside that truck was not belongings, not tools for work, but his family. At 5:45 a.m., the truck pulled away from the driveway. Inside, still alive, were Bella and Celeste Watts, unaware of what awaited them at their father's worksite. At 6:16 a.m., as the truck made its way toward its destination, another call was placed. This time it was Nichol Kessinger calling her best friend, Jim.
For 1 minute.
A phone call that lasted 111 minutes. A man pacing in his home, his voice steady, controlled. A woman on the other end, listening, responding, pausing at just the right moments. It was late. His pregnant wife and 2 daughters were asleep upstairs, unaware that this would be their final night alive. The next morning, they were gone. And the man who made that call stood in front of news cameras, his voice shaking as he begged for their safe return. His hands fidgeted. His eyes scanned the crowd. The world watched, but something felt wrong. The timeline. The words he chose. The way he avoided details. And then there was her. The woman on the other end of that call. The one whose name would surface in police reports, whose searches and text messages would paint a picture far more complicated than she ever admitted. She claimed she knew nothing. That she was misled, just like everyone else. But the more investigators looked, the more troubling the pieces became.
Played the damsel in distress without being the damsel and the distress.
Why did she erase messages, clear her history, and suddenly search for information that no
Try to break her SIM card.
Innocent person would need? Why did she claim she barely knew him when the evidence showed otherwise? And why, in the days before the crime, was she looking up wedding dresses and ways to start over?
Then Googling Ronnie Watts and the address of the Watts house.
A man willing to risk everything. A woman who wanted a new life. A family that stood in the way. A phone call that may hold the answers to it all. And then, there was the basement. A door left open when it shouldn't have been. A basement that raised questions from the very investigators who walked through that house.
Yes.
What was kept down there? Who had been there? And why, when pressed, did the answers feel incomplete? Tonight, we break down those 111 minutes, second by second.
I love this channel.
We retrace every word, every deleted message, every attempt to rewrite the truth. And we go beyond the call, to the basement, where secrets are hidden, where silence lingers.
Or that attic in there. Why didn't they check the attic? People think I'm nuts for checking the attic. That's the one place that they haven't checked the attic. Or is the attic. You know how much room is up there? I've seen the blueprints. There's a lot of room up there.
And where the most unsettling questions remain unanswered. Because when all is said and done, the evidence is still there, waiting to be heard. Chris Watts stands in front of news cameras, his voice trembling as he pleads for his wife and daughters to come home. His hands fidget. His words feel rehearsed. The town of Frederick, Colorado, watches, but something is off. The way he speaks. The way his eyes avoid the camera. His story is full of gaps, and the details don't add up.
And he laughs.
Behind the scenes, investigators are already pulling records, searching for answers. One discovery stands out, a 111-minute phone call between Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger just hours before everything changed. Nichol, his co-worker. His mistress. The woman he had promised a new life with. She claimed she knew nothing. That she was just another person caught in the whirlwind of the tragedy. But the details tell a different story. The phone call was long. Longer than usual. What was discussed? What was planned? And why did she immediately start deleting messages, clearing her search history, and distancing herself from the man she had been so deeply involved with? She had searched for wedding dresses. Researched ways to start a new life. And then, when it all unraveled, she made herself disappear, erasing the pieces that could connect her to what had happened next. Police push Chris for details, for anything that could explain his family's disappearance. He hesitates. He stumbles over his words. And then, investigators notice something unusual. The basement door. It's open when it shouldn't be. They ask him about it. His response is vague. Deflective.
There's something with the basement.
They search the basement, looking for any clue that could explain why it mattered. Something had been there. Someone had been there. But why? Every detail matters. Every second of that 111-minute call. Every deleted message. Every moment that doesn't fit the timeline. As the pressure builds, Chris Watts begins to break. His story crumbles. The lies unravel. And the deeper investigators dig, the more questions arise, not just about what happened that night, but about what role Nichol Kessinger really played in the hours leading up to the crime. 9:19 p.m. Chris Watts' phone lights up. Nichol Kessinger is calling. He answers. A conversation begins, one that will last for 111 minutes. One that will end just before a crime that shocked.
Could that be the call that was the catalyst? If you don't do what I'm about to tell you, I will leave you. And she says, you need to get rid of your family. Or we need to get rid of your family. Or some type of that effect. I think this 111-minute phone call was the signature for the Watts family's annihilation. Like, it was the catalyst. The planning, pretty much all I just said. I'm trying to find other words, but it's just that was what part of that call was. I can't remember if it was Nichol or Chris that said it, but they said part of it was phone thing, booty, which I highly doubt. But yet again, they were doing it like rabbits, so I wouldn't put it past both of them. But again, what do you think this phone call is about? I've heard a lot of different selections. One being that it was a, like, how do they say it? A placeholder, so that when they placed that call, they went to the place of Survey 319, dug, and then came back. But the time frame, it definitely doesn't match up. But again, I want to know your thoughts about this call. Do it now.
Shocks the world. The contents of this call remain a mystery. Nichol would later claim she could barely remember what was said.
Okay.
That it was just another night, another phone call. But for 111 minutes, they talked. The question is, about what? Chris had already made up his mind. At least, that's what he would later say. But was he alone in this decision? His relationship with Nichol had taken a turn. They weren't just sneaking around anymore. They were planning a future. A life without obstacles. A life without a wife. Without children. The timing of the call is crucial. It starts at 9:19 p.m., well after Shannon Watts had returned home from her business trip. The children were in bed. The house was quiet. Chris had already told Nichol that his marriage was over. That divorce was inevitable. Yet, something in this conversation kept them talking. Kept him engaged. A deep dive into Nichol's statements raises even more questions. She was able to recall small details of their time together, the places they went, the things they laughed about, the moments they shared. But when it came to this phone call,
Or about checking the expiration date on a box of condoms, that she remembers.
the longest recorded call between them, her memory became unclear.
Of course it did.
She couldn't remember specifics. Couldn't recall what was discussed. Yet, the next morning, her behavior changed drastically. She deleted messages. Erased searches. Removed anything that tied her to the man whose life was about to implode. The psychological weight of this call cannot be ignored. Chris Watts was on the edge. He had spent weeks preparing, testing the waters, seeing what he could get away with. He had told Nichol he was a father who barely saw his children. A husband in name only. He had crafted a version of himself that she believed. And now, during these 111 minutes, what was said? Did he confess his thoughts? Did she encourage him? Dissuade him? Or was it something else entirely? Experts have weighed in. Conversations of this length, at this critical time, are rarely insignificant. The emotional undertones, the pauses, the shifts in voice, everything matters. And yet, we only have the data. The call logs. The records of duration. No audio. No transcripts. Just the knowledge that this call ended at 11:10 p.m. Minutes before Chris would make a decision.
When also around that time, Shanann was actually supposed to come home, but then her plane got delayed. So
That would change everything. The basement door. A detail that should have meant nothing.
that
A
attitude.
door left open in a house that was about to become a crime scene. A detail so small that it could have been overlooked. But it wasn't. Because the police noticed. And when they asked Chris Watts about it, his answer didn't make sense. Chris claimed he might have left it open by accident. That maybe he had gone down there and forgotten to close it. But what was he doing in the basement in the hours leading up to the murders?
Probably,
And why
probably working out, pacing, and walking around down there because he didn't want to be upstairs because he probably heard the repercussions of what he had done, like things that were haunting him upstairs.
did officers get the feeling he wasn't telling the full story? The
I think
basement
right
wasn't
off
just
the bat.
another part of the house. It was isolated, away from the bedrooms, a place where no one would hear if something happened. A place where secrets could be kept. It was the one part of the home that didn't seem to fit the timeline. Because while most of Chris's actions that night could be accounted for, the basement remained a question mark. And then, there was Nichol Kessinger. Her phone data tells a story of its own. Pings that place her near the Watts residence at a time she shouldn't have been there. The morning of August 13th. Just hours after the murders. Was it a coincidence?
No,
Or was there more to it?
more to it.
She would later say she had nothing to do with what happened.
Of course she would.
That she was just another victim of Chris's deception. But there were things that didn't add up. Her
Nothing
searches. Her messages. The things she deleted before investigators could see them.
Praise
Could she have been in the
Jesus.
basement that night?
Yeah,
If she was, Why? Was she hiding? Waiting? Did she know more than she was willing to admit?
Yes.
Experts have weighed in on the significance of the basement in this case. A location that wasn't given much attention in the beginning but became a point of speculation later. Criminologists have studied the reports, the inconsistencies, the missing pieces. And one thing is clear, Chris Watts had an answer for everything. Until it came to the basement. Until it came to that door.
There's something in that basement.
Nichol Kessinger insisted she didn't know Chris Watts was married when they first met. That
That's
she
a lie.
believed he was in the process of separating. But the evidence says otherwise. Her internet searches, her text messages, her own words contradict the version of events she gave to investigators. She had searched for Shannon Watts long before she claimed to have known about her. She had looked up wedding dresses and ways to start a new life with someone else. If she truly believed Chris was an unmarried man, why was she searching for his wife? Why was she looking into his family? And why, in the days leading up to the murders, did she erase so much from her phone? Investigators noted that Nichol deleted messages, photos, and call logs before turning her phone over to them.
Emails.
She claimed she was embarrassed. That she didn't want the world to see her private conversations. But what was in those conversations that made them worth deleting? And why, of all the things she searched for online, did one question stand out among the rest? The question about Amber Fry. The woman who unknowingly had an affair with convicted murderer Scott Peterson.
She wanted to make money
A
off
woman
of
who
this.
later turned on him, working with authorities to bring him to justice. Why was Nichol Kessinger looking up Amber Fry just days before the Watts family disappeared? Chris's behavior also changed in those final weeks. A man who had once shared family photos and happy moments on social media suddenly seemed distant. He stopped engaging with Shannon's posts. Stopped responding to messages the way he used to. Friends noticed the shift. They asked if something
And then he writes to Shanann in prison, "Oh, I love you and forever and ever."
was wrong. He told them everything was fine. But it wasn't.
Wrong.
While Shannon was out of town, he was spending every moment he could with Nichol. And as the days passed, the lies piled up. Chris played the role of the grieving husband in front of the cameras. He begged for his family's safe return, knowing they would never come home. But it was his body language, his voice, his expressions that raised suspicions. When he spoke, there was no desperation. No real fear.
No empathy.
Just words. Hollow and rehearsed. And the moment he was left alone in the interrogation room, when he thought no one was watching, his posture changed. He leaned back. Took deep breaths. Ran his hands through his hair. The weight of what he had done settling in. Nichol claimed she had nothing to hide. That she was just another victim of Chris's deception. But the more investigators looked, the more questions they had.
We have
If she had no involvement, why did she make that 111-minute phone call the night before the murders? If she had nothing to do with it, why did her phone activity place her near the Watts home when she was supposed to be elsewhere?
yes.
If she truly knew nothing, why did her story change every time new evidence came to light? Chris and Nichol's narratives were falling apart. Piece by piece, the truth was slipping through the cracks. The interrogation room was small, almost suffocating, but the tension inside was even heavier. Chris Watts sat with his arms crossed, his body rigid, his face expressionless. Across from him, investigators watched, waiting. They had spent hours pressing him, dissecting his words, challenging his inconsistencies. He had maintained the same story, the same rehearsed lines, but the cracks were beginning to show. He was losing control of the narrative.
He never lost
The moment
word.
he agreed to take a polygraph,
He didn't lose it. He never had it. The guy trying to rehearse this dialogue that he was having on the camera, pish posh. He sucked. Nicola was probably a little bit better, but she sucked in it as well.
test, his fate was sealed. The results were undeniable. He failed. Miserably. The lead investigator didn't hold back. She leaned in, her voice firm yet calm, telling Chris exactly what he already knew: he had lied. His heart rate had spiked. His body had betrayed him. And now, he had two options: keep lying and watch the walls close in, or start talking before it was too late. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His breathing became uneven. His hands fidgeted. For the first time since the investigation began, he realized there was no way out. When Chris finally spoke, the words came out slowly, as if he was still trying to convince himself of his own lies. He insisted that Shannon had hurt the girls first, that he had acted in a moment of blind rage. But investigators weren't buying it. His story made no sense. His voice cracked. His hands shook. He was unraveling. And then, almost in a whisper, he said it. That he was the one who had ended their lives. That it was all him. The room fell silent. The weight of his words hung in the air, thick and unbearable. Every investigator knew they had just heard the truth, but it was far from over. The details were horrifying. The methodical way he had planned it, the way he had gone to work the next morning as if nothing had happened. The way he had texted Nichol Kessinger just hours after disposing of his family's bodies. Nichol, who had once claimed to be just another victim of Chris's deceit, was now in a different position. She had spoken to law enforcement, given statements, provided text messages, but there were still too many unanswered questions. Investigators wanted to know more. About her searches. About her deleted...
They're pretty much trying to put a puzzle together without the important puzzle pieces that would complete it. And she's like, I don't know where the puzzle pieces went. You see no puzzle pieces. It's all one image. That's literally what she's doing. She's like playing Jedi mind tricks.
Messages. About why her phone had pinged near the Watts home on the morning of August 13th. She denied any involvement.
Of course she did.
Insisted she had no idea what Chris was planning. That she was just as shocked as the rest of the world.
Yeah, okay.
But her words didn't erase the doubts. She knew more than she let on.
Oh yes, she did.
She had seen the signs. She had asked Chris about his wife and children. She had questioned his strange behavior. Yet she had never come forward. Even after the news of the disappearance spread, she remained silent. It wasn't until law enforcement found her search history, Amber Fry, wedding dresses, how to start a new life, that the full extent of her awareness became clearer.
Yeah, but no one...
Chris Watts had confessed, but
no one did anything about it.
The story was still far from over. The legal process moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. His guilty plea spared him the death penalty, but it couldn't spare him from the consequences of what he had done. Multiple life sentences. No chance of parole. No possibility of ever walking free again. Nichol Kessinger vanished from public view.
Not until January.
Changed her name. Moved to a new city.
She didn't change her name. She didn't move to a different city. She's right where Colorado is. She's in that area. I'm not going to say the city, but she's still there.
Tried to escape the notoriety that followed her. But the internet never forgets. Every job application, every background check, every public record carried the weight of her past. For Shannon's family, the wounds could never fully heal. They had lost a daughter, a sister, 2 granddaughters. The weight of their absence was crushing. The Watts home in Frederick, Colorado, became a symbol of everything that had been lost. The community that had once rallied in support now stood haunted by the memories of what had happened behind those walls. This was more than a crime. It was a betrayal. A story of trust shattered, of lives taken, of a man who spent weeks weaving a web of lies, only to be undone by his own arrogance. And at the center of it all, the question that still lingers: why? Why did Chris Watts, a father who claimed to love his
for a new woman,
children, a husband who claimed to be devoted, commit an act so unthinkable? Why did he believe he could erase an entire family and walk away as if nothing had happened? And what role did Nichol truly play in the days leading up to the murders? Some questions may never have answers. But the truth remains. Chris Watts will never be a free man again. Shannon, Bella, Celeste, and the unborn son they never got to meet will never be forgotten. And the 111-minute phone call that preceded it all will forever remain a chilling reminder that, sometimes, the most ordinary moments conceal the most unthinkable endings. Do you believe the full truth has been revealed?
No.
Or are there still missing pieces that have yet to come to light?
Yes.
What do you think about the 111-minute phone call and the basement's role in this case?
It was the
Could there
kill
be
button.
more to this story than what was officially uncovered? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If this case kept you on edge, there's more where that came from. Check out our latest deep dive into another case where a single overlooked detail changed everything. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.
Make sure you guys do all what they just said. Give them the love that they deserve. Definitely that 111-minute phone call bothers me all the time, trying to figure out exactly what it could be and so forth. So, your thoughts, your opinions, everything down in the below. I surely love to read them as much as I can get to. Because I've seen some comments are like, "Oh, he doesn't. Zawoki doesn't reply to comments." I reply to as much as I can. So bear with me. Definitely still bothers me. It's like, okay, what did you talk about? But you can remember all that other stuff? Come on, you can remember stuff. Oh, no, it's just, we talk dirty. For a 111-minute phone call? No. Or the ping to her friend Jim. Gosh, it's like you want to connect the dots. You can see the dots all together to make a picture, but it's that one little piece that's it's like just trying to daydream and be like, what is it? What is that piece that could change all this? It's NK. If we find out that she's innocent or find out that she's guilty. Come on. And with this woman innocent until proven guilty, I would say she's guilty, but the cops don't want to do anything. Kind of thing. With that being said, please take care, guys. Have a great night. Take care. Be safe. I think I said be safe already. And keep nerding on. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.